I joined Livepeer Inc. in 2021 as head of community, and then evolved into head of ecosystem. Was around just before Confluence, so it's been a while. I most recently have been with Vana, which is a open protocol for data sovereignty, building for user-owned AI. And user-owned foundation models, and I've been on the Livepeer Growth Advisory Board. And I'm really excited to be here. I'm here personally on my own time because I really care about this project, and I love being part of this community. So I changed the title of the talk slightly. I'm going to talk about how I think Livepeer has a really unique opportunity right now to lead at the intersection of open source, AI, and video. And I'm going to talk a little bit, give a very high-level overview of kind of what the open source video landscape looks like, kind of a little bit of how the open source AI landscape is evolving, and what I think are the exciting opportunities for Livepeer. So, the world's open video infrastructure. Doug did a great job kind of encapsulating where we are with the vision and mission for Livepeer today. But I think it's really important to ask who cares about that vision. If someone's curious about open video, what does Livepeer really offer them? And I've seen the Livepeer project now for almost 5 years. I think we've often struggled to articulate a really clear value proposition for the Livepeer network itself. And there's some obvious reasons for that. There has been a tension between Inc. And how Inc. and the project presents externally. In my role at Livepeer, a lot of what I did was go out to broader industry events and raise awareness of Livepeer. And I think that there was, and there still is, a dominant perception that Livepeer is a commercial enterprise, that it is the Livepeer Studio API. And I think that, we're at an exciting moment where we can start to talk differently about what Livepeer actually is. And also, Inc. has played such an incredible role, and I think we talk about Inc. in our confines really openly. But Inc. has been the reason why we are at a point for this project to be able to kind of stand on its own. So I think this is a natural and really healthy transition that we're seeing now, where Livepeer Inc. is really kind of rebranding and certainly diving deep and focusing on Daydream, and the foundation now is stepping up to become the steward of the broader mission. And I think that there's a lot of freedom but also responsibility that comes with this for both the foundation and the community to really, redefine what open video infrastructure means. And I think this is a moment where we can get back to our roots and back to the roots of open source technology and reconnect with the people who really care about what that mission is for open source. Rich laid out a really ambitious mission for the foundation to accelerate demand on the network. And I'd like to make a case for, as we think about, going out to market to look for demand, who as a priority we should be reaching out to and how we should be connecting with them. So I'll just really quickly go over kind of the open source video landscape. So the reality is that the global video and media industry actually cares very deeply about open video infrastructure because they depend on it. This is an image that gets circulated really widely, in the video developer and broader media community, just highlighting FFmpeg as the most widely used encoding protocol. And over 50% of commercial video players are built on open source software, like Netflix, YouTube. None of these platforms would exist without, FFmpeg and other primitives. Oops. Oh, sorry. I thought you guys were seeing that, but you weren't. Challenge of having dual laptops going. So that's, I'm sure you guys have seen this before. Yeah, I just talked about it, but that's kind of what it looks like. And so there's kind of two parts of the open source landscape. There's open source software and there's open source standards. And open source standards, are industry established guidelines for video interoperability across encoders, networks, browsers, and devices. The full stack of kind of the video infrastructure pipeline. These are maintained and governed by formal bodies with, massive industry representation. We're talking about hundreds, upwards of thousands of companies and foundations who contribute to these standards, and they've been around for a really long time. The Consumer Technology Alliance was formed in 1924, and it operates, one of the most important projects today, the web application video ecosystem. That's what WAVE is. You have the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, which was started by Tim Berners-Lee, which leads the Media Working Group. The IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, which is developing the media over QUIC standard, which is a next generation low latency transport protocol for live and interactive video built over HTTP standards. There's so much here. C2PA, that's a more recent one that's been led by Adobe, where Livepeer, that was one of the last things I did was help get us signed up to C2PA at that table. There's a ton on the standard side. And then you go to software. And so, software is the, open source code that kind of implements those standards. Again, the full stack of the video technology landscape is kind of covered by open source software. Open source software can be maintained by companies, communities, or foundations. FFmpeg, Shaka Player, GStreamer, OBS, those are, widely popular community-run open source software, but then you have HLS, WebRTC. Those are maintained by companies, and you actually end up having to lobby those companies to make changes to that open source software. And then there's lots of overlapping, intersecting industries with the video technology stack. This is a map created by the Academy Software Foundation, which hosts projects that are used or intended to be used by the motion picture industry or the content creation industry. It's really hard to actually see what all of those different projects are, but there's dozens. FFmpeg is in there. Anything around content creation, there's just like a ton of adjacent open source software for that. And so ChatGPT and I actually did some calculations, and we figured out that their conservative estimate is that there are 1 million contributors to over, again, conservatively 200,000 active open source video projects on GitHub. And that includes repos that have keywords around AI and not just video. So, Comfy UI would be included in that. So, this is just like a flavor of kind of the size of the opportunity when we think about, who we can be reaching out to talk about Livepeer's mission. This is just another chart showing it cuts off in 2024, but you can just see kind of the massive explosion of AI developer repos on GitHub. So AI is, really driving a lot of the new open source adoption. And open source has really taken on new life with AI, and I think a big reason why is because a lot of the major corporations have realized that if they want to prioritize AI, they actually need to be using open source. This is a study that was put out by McKinsey and Mozilla Foundation this year that surveyed over 700 technology leaders across different sectors of industry. And not surprisingly, the technology, media, and telecom industries are, the ones that have been fastest and are using most open source technologies. This is actually a quote from, Mark Zuckerberg, was one of the loudest voices and back in 2023 advocating for open source. Oh, wait, I keep not doing that. Sorry, I'm gonna go back so you can see what I had just previously talked about. Sorry. Rich, if I'm talking and slides aren't moving, can you just move your slide? Yeah, sorry, that was the chart looking at the growth in AI developer repos on GitHub. So you can see with Stable Diffusion and ChatGPT that kind of catalyzed just a huge explosion around, not just model repos, but infrastructure engineer. Well, infrastructure actually didn't move that much. That's really interesting. But certainly at the application level. Okay, talked about that. That's the yeah. So one of the important points that has come up in the industry is obviously like open washing, which is really interesting. We all know about greenwashing, but open washing, really I think is calling out that there's more than just model open sourcing when we think about open source and AI systems. And this is a diagram that was put out following the proceedings of the Columbia Convening on Openness and Artificial Intelligence, which is a great report. I encourage everyone to read it, and it starts to lay out all of the different components beyond just open models that are part of making sure that open source develops in an open way, that AI develops in an open way. And so this is just a quick snapshot of some of the emerging open standards in AI, kind of looking at what the AI stack looks like today. You have data standards and provenance. The C2PA is on there, but data is something that's become close to my heart since I joined Vana. We've run out of publicly available high quality training data, and we really need to start looking at private sources of data. Part of that challenge is like models have also been trained without user consent. So, you have to look at privacy and ownership in addition to, just making sure researchers get access to the highest quality models. At Vana, we actually partnered with Flower AI to develop the world's first user-owned federated training model. So there's some really interesting stuff happening at that layer. Obviously, model interoperability standards, compute and infrastructure. That includes not just decentralized networks like Livepeer or Jensen or Prime Intellect, a lot of the other Web3 projects, BitTensor, others, but also non-Web3 projects. Open Compute project is really interesting. Meta actually open source all of their networking architecture to the Open Compute project. You have Kubernetes projects that are also creating standards that, Livepeer is also using as we think about like how to develop Dockerized network structures. There's obviously a ton of cross-industry consortia led by like the Linux Foundation and others. Ethics and safety, part of the ethics conversation is also how energy intensive and the environmental impact of just the AI boom right now. And then agents obviously is another like really important emerging area with the Model Context Protocol. The MIT Media Lab is actually leading a really interesting open source, again, kind of consortium around MCP. And then there's really interesting stuff happening around agent economies and agent monetization with Cloudflare and Coinbase and the X402 project and others. So how can Livepeer win at the frontier of open source video and AI? I would argue that there are three main things that I think we can do. And the first one really addresses what I do think is a challenge that as a project we need to overcome as we think about entering into the broader industry and market of open source video technology contributors and players, which is that we're not really well understood, and the people who do kind of get it still don't really trust us because we haven't really shown up in the communities where we're actually even using open source technology. The second is around just coordinating common challenges in the industry. It's widely recognized that open source technology is underfunded and often abused when you have really large corporations with incredible profits not contributing to maintaining or even funding the open source software that they use. And I think the third is really building the value proposition for the network and really articulating that clearly. I have some more just thoughts on those points. So I think it's beyond just giving money, and I know that there's an open source funding SPE, and I think that that's a really important first step. But I think we need to be looking at how do we create deeper kind of connected tissue, kind of cross community engagement across these projects. You know, FFmpeg is probably like the most obvious one, given its dependency, given the dependency Livepeer has on it. I think, you know, being a bridge between Web3 video and AI, projects like FAL, which are kind of like skirting on being open. They're not necessarily open source. They do have grants where they provide free compute to open source projects. You know, I think that projects like that, there actually could be potential for strategic partnerships. And then it's like, where can we lead? Like, where can Livepeer actually be the creator of new standards that we actually bring industry to the table to get them supporting. I talked about coordinating funding for open video public goods. I floated this last year when I went to DMUX and FOMS, which is the Foundation for Open Media Standards. So there's actually a lot of interest in this, including the founder of Shaka Player, the Streaming Video Technology Alliance is really interested in it. Livepeer has, it's really interesting that Livepeer has kind of too much funding and not enough contributors, and the rest of the open source world has too much contributors and not enough funding. And I think that's something we can really solve. Like the crypto economics, we still have to get over the fact that like a lot of open source developers think crypto is really sus, and some open source contributors just get really angry talking about getting compensated anyway. But I think there's enough people who, you know, recognize it's a challenge that we could, you know, leverage our strength and expertise in creating sustainable funding models. And then the last one, it's like obviously like, you know, the network value proposition. I think the foundation and, you know, the network advisory board, was that what it was called? I think they highlighted this. It's like Daydream is poised for breakout success. What is the network product or core network technology that Daydream is actually using that other projects can use? You know, there's really interesting projects that have come out of the ecosystem like MuseMe that, you know, Philip ended up figuring out his own GPU framework at home, but like what would, you know, a kind of bring your own container or Dockerized model for him look like? You know, you only get one shot when you go out and meet someone at an event or an industry conference. And I think like really crystallizing that network value proposition is just going to really be able to accelerate awareness and interest in Livepeer. And it's really about building that flywheel. And so my last slide is actually what I'm going to be hacking on tomorrow, which is a proposal for an open source ecosystem SPE. And the goal of this is really to support the foundation in its work and accelerate the effort to, you know, attract industry leading talent and partners who can contribute ideas and code to the core tech, who can, you know, start to be part of the conversation of like, what is that core value proposition, getting more insight in terms of what the actual pain points are in the broader open video ecosystem right now, so that we can really nail, you know, if we look back at that diagram with FFmpeg as like the key leg in the stool, like what's Livepeer's key leg in that stool? And yeah, just getting more people beyond our community who can become, you know, ambassadors and evangelists for the project, and ultimately build a pipeline of users who, you know, find value in wanting to use the network. So would love to chat with people about that. I am super bullish on this project. I'm super excited for the Inc. team to be doubling down on Daydream. It's so exciting to see, you know, the number of new contributors and project builders who've you know, entered this space since I left the, you know, full time at Livepeer a year ago. So I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for listening. That was way over. I'm so sorry.
No worries. I was waving the 30 seconds for the past 5 minutes. No worries. We don't have a lot of time for questions, but maybe just a really, really quick question. Really quick.
Thanks, Shannon. I thought that was a fantastic overview of a lot of the like related technologies. I've had very similar. I wonder if you can say more about like what's been successful on. So I went from being like a video engineer at a crypto company, then I'm like working in the protocol ecosystem now with a lot of like crypto skeptics and finding myself as the crypto advocate in the room suddenly, which is fine. And like when I talk them through, especially like sustainable open source funding models through the treasury and stuff, they're like, oh, that sounds really cool. So I'm wondering, like, what strategies have you found for that kind of community in terms of like bringing them around to like, no, there's actually some like really interesting, novel things we can do with this technology.
I went to FOMS and DMUX 3 years in a row, and the third year they were like, she's not going away. And they listened. They were like, okay, she's like actually wants to be part of the community. I know it's like, it's literally as simple as that. Like, just like keep showing up, keep letting these people know that you care about what they're doing. You actually have the same mission. And once you realize that like you're all, it's like kind of cheesy, but you're all working towards an open internet and you want to like help people who have barriers in doing that. Like,
Right on. Yeah, I'm headed back to FOSDEM next year, so yeah, same
Hooray.
kind of idea.
yeah. Oh, Jason. Shout out to Jason who like has helped me like think through this. Jason is leading the open source funding SPE and we've had a bunch of chats as I've started to think about getting involved in this, and I'm really excited if the SPE proposal passes for Jason to play a key role in being a bridge between our technical community and the broader open source ecosystem.